Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Due Diligence. We're here on another hot and steamy week of summer.
It is steamy.
On our acclaimed real estate podcast. Acclaimed real estate podcast. I'm here with Lee Taylor, real estate expert, myself, Jason Wieloch, from the Wieloch Group at Compass in our typical North Atlanta studios. And LT, you look like you got a haircut.
Oh, I did. I got more than that. I got a high and loose, I like to call it. It's not a high and tight, it's a high and loose.
Is that a military term?
I've never seen one before until I saw it on my head Friday. Is that why it's called a high and loose?
Well, you're looking stellar today, sir.
Thank you. It's back to the old. It's as close to a 1991 Lee Taylor haircut as you can get.
And back then,
I was an army officer
stationed in
That's right.
Saudi Arabia.
That's right.
For those of
and it was a really steamy summer back then.
Well, it is the steamiest week of the year. This is the week of July 13th, and I think it's as hot and humid as it's been. It's also a continuing COVID-19 story that affects our real estate lives here in Atlanta and nationally. And of course, with that, we get all kinds of questions and all kinds of theories. Right now, I think there's so many things out there that are predicting real estate. Some of them will be right, some will be wrong. And we're here to look into our crystal balls, Lee, and figure out what housing has ahead. And one of the major topics or major discussions people are having is, will it change how and where people buy real estate, right? So we have a good friend of mine from Compass in Houston, Alex Lloyd.
Excellent.
She wants to join us and talk to us about this subject and talk to us a little bit about how her market's doing as well. So
cool.
I'm going to bring Alex on the show. Let my Zoom call load up here.
Hey, Alex.
Alex.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm fine. How are y'all?
Good.
We're good. We're good. We're just sitting here in the comforting AC of what's the beginning of, in Atlanta, the hot and humid part of the year, mid-July, the dog days of summer, as we call it. And from what I hear, Houston's even hotter, right?
It is. We had a heat index yesterday of 108. But I think Atlanta, do y'all get humidity?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Like crazy.
I've only flown through Atlanta, so I don't know too much about it. But here it's like, 95% humidity, and it's just like hard to breathe. And then you have COVID on top of it, so you don't know what's going on.
You don't know what you're breathing.
Houston is one of the leading COVID kind of growth cities right now, right?
Yes. I'm not proud to say that, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, our listeners know who we are, so tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you. Lee just met you on our little prep call before this. But tell us, who is Alex Lloyd?
Okay, well, born and raised in Houston. I've been in real estate for just right about 13 years. I started out, and the majority of my time was at a little company called Greenwood King Properties. They're a boutique broker here in Houston, and they're one of the top brokers here. And I always give all my credit to them because I learned so much there, and they taught me everything I know about real estate. And I was very fortunate enough to be recruited by Compass and November of 2018, and a founding agent here. And I've been here ever since. So, and I love it. It's a great company.
Yeah, it is. We've enjoyed our time here. We came in August of 18, I think, by virtue of just when our office opened a little bit before Houston did. And I'm curious, because you mentioned a brokerage you came from. Is Houston one of those markets where you get a lot of more the boutiques, or do you have a lot of major brands that control the market? What does that look like?
So we do have a couple of boutique brokerages. Martha Turner was acquired by Sotheby's, so now it's called Martha Turner Sotheby's. Greenwood King has not been acquired by anybody, but we had a company here called John Doherty, and Douglas Elliman actually came in and took over John Doherty. So those are the three real boutique brokerages here in Houston. And then, yes, we have Keller Williams, we have Coldwell Banker, we have Better Homes and Gardens, Gary Green.
Ebby Halliday?
Say that again?
Do you have Ebby Halliday in Houston?
We do not, no.
Okay.
At least that I know of. And we have Remax, some Century 21. So yeah, we still have, the kind of named brokerages have been around for a while.
And you sell a lot of really beautiful luxury homes. I see a lot of $3, $4, $5 million properties coming across your social media. So sprinkle a little bit of that magic over on us here in Atlanta.
Well, yes, I do have some, and I have some that are actively listed right now. And the luxury market is doing pretty well right now in Houston. I think people are, I don't want to say taking advantage of, but I think it's a lot less expensive for people to buy these homes and finance them than buy them in cash. So people are using the low interest rates right now to their advantage. But we really have properties selling across the board. I will say, and I'll kind of give us a little bit of credit. I have our market results here from Houston, the second quarter, and Compass is number one in active listings with our dollar volume, and then listings sold dollar volume from 300,000 to above $2 million. So we're number one in all those categories. So
That's awesome.
In a year and a half we've been here, we have really we've done a great job, and give a lot of credit to our staff there too, because they've been very supportive.
Lee, what you
got?
got?
Is that mostly the in-town Houston market, like where George Bush lives and all that, those in-town beautiful neighborhoods, or is that spread out throughout Katy and everywhere else all over Houston?
It's spread out all over Houston. And in fact, I'm actually the memorial office where I am right now was George Bush's office. He was on the 9th floor, and his entire
was
his office. So it's a really special building to be in.
Is that where he paints dogs and stuff? Is that
okay, I'm sorry.
That's George Bush Senior, right?
That's
what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Junior. I'm talking about Junior.
Junior paints the dogs up in Dallas.
Right. Oh, he lives in Dallas. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So
giving Lee a little bit of a presidential history lesson here.
My HW from my W. Go ahead.
Well, that's my fault too. But yes, HW did live in Tanglewood here in Houston, which is just right down the street from where I am right now. And he was on the 9th floor of this building. So it's
Well, one of the parallels that Alex and I drew this morning between Atlanta and Houston is possibly the pricing, right? So they had at any given time, and we're just speaking to luxury for a moment, and then we're going to move on to our big meaty topic today, which is the end of in-town real estate. But there are, I guess, approximately 200 listings above 3 million in Houston and MLS at one given time. I counted around 150. Mm-hmm. And I think probably the main difference isn't necessarily median as much as they have a larger population of people.
I don't think you realize it's all about Texas big. Everything's bigger in Texas.
That's right. I forgot. Yeah. A whole nother country. Are you a Longhorn? I just saw the hook 'em horns.
Some of my family.
Okay.
Longhorns, but I do have a lot of Sooners in my family too. So
I got there as fast as I could. I lived there from 91 to 94 in McKinney. Had a blast in Texas.
But wait, being a Sooner fan and a Longhorn fan, that's like having Auburn and Alabama people in the same household.
That's right.
That's got to be real tough.
Well, we have a large family. So, and then another huge part of my family are SMU people. So that's not, they're not really rivalries with anybody, but it's still another great school. So.
Well, I think one of the things that we have in common in many of the cities across the South and Texas, because Texas is its own thing, apparently, is we are these big, sprawling urban areas where people, get in their cars and go places, and it's more affordable. The economies have done really well the last decade during the latest boom. You see a lot of people from these coastal cities that have migrated in the last 30 to 40 years ever so slowly to these areas for better lifestyle. And then, of course, the trade-off is we don't have the dense public transportation to get around, like, say, in New York or Chicago, Boston.
Exactly.
But we have our own issues, and those can be good or bad, maybe even good in some senses during COVID. And that kind of leads me into our big topic of the day, which is a lot of people are asking, and not just the news media, but potential clients are asking about how COVID-19 is affecting real estate, not just price-wise. We can talk about pricing all day long. How is it going to, which ironically, it's improved prices.
Yeah.
But I think the bigger topic is how will it change what and where people buy whether it be now or in the future, right? And we're faced with sort of answering that. And Alex, you had a good answer this morning, which is it's hard to know what is the real information right now in our business because it kind of changes week to week, right?
Yeah. And I think it sometimes can change daily. So, and I think you and I were talking earlier. I mean, one week you and we've hit the ground running and we don't have time for anything but our clients, which obviously is what we're here for. But the next week can be crickets and you're going, well, what happened? And it could just be a change in tone with what's going on with COVID. It could be anxiety because you don't know what to do if you have children. You don't know if you're going to be homeschooling them. You don't know if you're going to be sending them to school. And both of them, either way, you're having anxiety about it. So, but I think with where we are right now, we've actually done very well during this time because real estate is an essential business. And I think some people don't know that, but everyone has to have a place to live. So I'm glad that we're deemed an essential business because I really think for the most part, agents have been very responsible. And we've been very respectful of people and their properties. And, I supply gloves and masks to anyone who comes in the door, hand sanitizer. I open everything with a Clorox wipe. And that way, no one's touching anything but me and the Clorox wipe. So, it is definitely, it's a different way of doing things. And I don't think it's going to change in the next at least a year. Mm-hmm. But I think that has switched people's mindsets on what they want out of a house.
So tell us about what you're seeing in that context then. What do people want to buy versus say 6 months ago?
Well, gosh, it's hard to even remember what 6 months ago was, right? I mean, I've been in this for a year.
You could go to Houston Astros games back then, remember?
Yeah. Very true. Basketball games, everything it's just changed so much. And, this really happened right after the holidays. So the holidays, you're kind of tired. January, it's kind of a blur. And then this stuff started happening, January, February. So what we are seeing a lot of is people want outdoor space. They want a place for their kids to play. They want a pool, or they just want some sort of green space, which in Houston, we're actually very lucky to have. We don't have, brownstones. We don't have a lot of, we don't have a central downtown. I mean, we do, but that's mostly apartments and people who are really working downtown. It's not really a family kind of area. I'm seeing, just like everyone else, they want office space. They want a place also, if you have children, where they can have their children be. And it's not like in the front living room or right in the kitchen. They want a place where they can actually teach their kids and have all their stuff, excuse me, but like crap out of eyesight. I mean, they don't want to walk in and there's all their kids' stuff just right there. Another one that I found is a place for not a gym, but maybe a place to put a treadmill or a place to put a Peloton. We're seeing a big shift in, gosh, maybe my house is too small now. I've had my family home with me for 6 months and this is crazy. I need to get out of here. And we're not really traveling that much. So people want a little bit more space. And we are seeing people coming from West Coast and East Coast because they're realizing living on top of each other in these condos, apartments, co-ops, whatever it is. And they've gotten sick. And, they're touching elevator buttons and they're touching handrails that other people are touching. And I couldn't even imagine. I talked to an agent in New York, Compass office, who's down here in the Woodlands, which is a very nice, large suburban area north of town. And he's living with his in-laws. It's like 8,000 square foot house. And he's like, I don't know if I want to go back. This is great. My kids can run around. We have a place for our baby and a place for us and the place for the in-laws and a place to work out and walk around. And, so I think there's been a big shift in what the consumer is looking at now. So
I don't know about you, Alex and Lee, but I've seen for years that when people come from those coastal cities to places like Atlanta or Houston, they rarely want to go back anyway, even pre-COVID, because they get so much more space for their money. all of my like New York and California clients I've ever had have come here and been like, oh my God, so much house. But maybe it's going to be more pronounced than ever.
Well, it is, because from a longer term trend, the FEMA is giving up on certain parts of the coast. So there are certain coasts. I was listening to a Southern Environmental Law podcast. Well, I'm a total nerd, but these people were profiling Charleston and how they've dug tunnels underneath it. The same thing's happened in Miami and probably Beaumont and Port Arthur and Corpus Christi. And there's places that just aren't serviceable as residential areas anymore. I'm sure the oil derricks and all that stuff on the west, is that the East Coast? The East Coast of Texas are still thriving, but the oil business isn't doing so great right now, right? There's a whole lot of turmoil with oil. Is that fair to say, Alex?
Yeah, that's very fair to say. And I think that hit our market in the spring. So we had COVID, then we had the stock market crash. We also have election year. And then we had the oil crisis where, remember, it went negative.
Right.
Our gas prices were back where it was during like the 92 Gulf War. I mean, I wasn't
really
old at the time, but I can remember my parents going, oh my gosh, it's 99 cents to fill up. This is great. You know, it's great, but it's not great.
Right. Not good for real estate. So many people make their money that way down there.
Well, go ahead.
I'm sorry, but Houston has come so far since oil, because we had the big oil crash and crisis in the 80s, and interest rates were like 22%. And it was just a nightmare to live in Houston. But we have so much more here. You know, we have energy, we have oil and gas, we have one of the largest medical centers, I think, in the country, and one of the best in the world. And in fact, there's a statistic out there that our medical center, with how big it is, it would be the 8th largest city in the nation. It's huge. And
what's that called again?
The medical center, Texas Medical Center.
Texas Medical Center. Okay, wow.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say no, go ahead.
I was saying we have MD Anderson, Methodist.
That's
Texas
what I was thinking of.
Yeah. So in fact, I don't know if you know, keep up with stuff like this, but Kelly Preston, who was John Travolta's wife, she was down here getting cancer treatments for her breast cancer, and unfortunately she.
I saw that the other day.
I have a friend there with has a really unique like thyroid cancer, and he's leaving Alabama once a month to go to MD Anderson.
Oh.
It's a wonderful community, and they even have furnished apartments for people who are getting cancer treatment as well.
Well, I'm gonna pivot back to the housing thing for a second,
Sure.
Which is, I think it's fair to say that a lot of people will be at the very least thinking about adding that extra bedroom space for the virtual or home office, if you will.
Alex is right on. That list she had is really, really right on.
And I think that's going to be true. That's one of those things that's going to be true in any market, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the bigger question from that, because that's an obvious short-term thing, is how do you see urban real estate, which has been on fire the last 10 years in all major cities? How do you see it faring the next 5 years? And this isn't really a question we all have to answer, is do we see a major shift in people's desire to live in town? Do they just exit to the suburbs? And I don't know if I believe that. I also don't know if I believe people will work virtually 5 days a week, which really would dictate that, right? If you didn't have to be in the city anymore. But what are your thoughts on that, Alex? There's articles out there that suggest this is the end of in-town real estate.
I don't necessarily believe that, but I don't know, right? Things are, like we talked about earlier, like the crystal ball theory. Everyone's like, well, what can my house sell for what? The numbers show this, but in 5 years, I don't know. I'll give you one example, and I think we spoke about this morning when I was talking to you about a listing I have in West U. And it's a luxury listing. It's 4.6 million. And after I got off the phone with you, I had a call with my seller, and they're such a wonderful family. Like, they're just very, very sweet. And she said, Alex, my kids are at home still. So she has 2 children. They both graduated from college. One of them was going to get a job in New York. And then the other one works here in Houston, but she lives in a 1-bedroom apartment. So who wants to work out of a, 500 square feet when you're alone all day anyway, and you can't do anything, you can't go out with your friends, and you're young, you want to do something. So they've and this is about a almost 8,000 square foot house. So they have plenty of space for them. And she said, they're still here. And I think, and they're very happy to have them home. So we had this long conversation. And she said, what we're going to probably end up doing, and I know this podcast is going to be broadcasted soon, but they're going to end up taking the house off the market maybe the next couple of weeks, because they're going to have some people come in and do some renovation work. But she said, I don't have a drive to want to sell my house right now because I have my kids home and I love having them home. And yes, is it hard sometimes? Sure. When we have a showing, I have to get, pick up after them and get them out the door and get the dogs and everything. But she said, there's really right now, versus 6 months ago when I had a drive to go home to sell the house, it's just not there right now. And so I get it. She has 7,600 square feet, and they have a 20,000 square foot lot with a pool and barbecue and television outside. I mean, they have everything you could want in like a little small resort in the city, right in the middle of the city. So maybe in the future, maybe next year after they do their renovations and stuff, and it's just going to be the two of them when the children, or I say children, they're grown, they are adults, they're graduated from college. But when they're out and they're back at work, hopefully, and they're, back in their office space, they'll probably say, okay, now we don't need all this space. We're ready to move. So I do think that some people who were trying to trend towards that more minimalist lifestyle, and they don't need all this square footage, are now saying, I can afford the house. Where am I going to go? Do I want movers in here? Do I want packers in here? Do I want people touching my stuff and opening drawers and stuff? I don't know if I want that right now. And if you can afford to live there, then I think that's something some people have decided to do. Now, not everyone has that luxury and they need to sell because they've lost their job or they're being transferred. So this isn't a very popular case. But I think with people who do have the space, they're kind of like, I'll just stay. And there's nowhere for us to go because we can't really travel. We can't go overseas. Cases of COVID are spiking in, now Mexico and Central America. So, and that's kind of a popular place for us to go, is we typically go south. There's only a 2-hour flight. And so, but the trend, right now, I think the trend is maybe to go to the suburbs because you do have a lot more space. But in 5 years, I don't know if people are going to be working from home. I wish I had that answer for you.
It just depends on the city. It really does. And Houston's going to thrive. Dallas, Fort Worth, maybe not Fort Worth as much as Dallas. Atlanta will thrive. It's just the core, the in-town core is all about the neighborhoods, just like Houston is. And each neighborhood is going to stand on its own, and different school districts are going to stand on their own. And other parts of these exurban areas around Atlanta and around Houston aren't going to be as strong. It's going to be about schools and culture just as much as in town is.
Well, I was going to comment that it's not just all about, do I have to drive to work? There's a cultural aspect and choice to living in town versus the suburbs too that people make, whether it's the food and the restaurants that you want to have, which a lot of times the richness of that is more in town, right? There is the access to airport, right? Which is major in Atlanta. If you live in town, it's way more convenient to fly out of here.
Two.
Right? Well, we're not as big. Remember, we're not like Texas, but we do have the largest airport in the world.
Yeah.
So, and there's a lot of things infrastructure wise that come with living in town, right? A lot of these in-town parks and developments, for us, it's the Beltline, it's the circular trail and the ability to get out and bike on that, things like that a lot of times suburban areas don't have at as high of a level. So I hesitate to think that people will just strictly make this choice because of commuting versus not commuting.
Certain suburbs in Atlanta just are not as nice as other suburbs.
Sure.
Certain ones have great schools like Buford. So those will thrive in the next 20 years. Many are going to be diminished.
Is that more about income equality than it is COVID though?
Certainly. But like I said, it's about culture and schools and safety and other things that make cities, cities and neighborhoods, neighborhoods.
Yeah. I think no, go ahead, Alex. Chime in. Sorry. You're only here once. We need to hear from you.
Yeah.
Maybe, probably in the future.
Hopefully I'll be invited back. I I will say that people who are transferring in tend to just stay on the outskirts, like the suburbs, because I think that the people moving from Boston, New York, maybe Philadelphia, we've had some people from New Jersey, even some people, Atlanta, who have this sense of like, okay, I don't want to live in the city because I'm leaving the big city to have more space. Well, in Houston, you really do have space here, even if you're, in the city. But I think they're in their mind, they're thinking, okay, I'm going to move, since I have to move to Houston, I would rather stay maybe in Katy or Sugar Land or the Woodlands or somewhere where it's more, where in their mind, it's like everything's bigger in Texas, right? You have all this land and everything. And that's just kind of their perception. And even though they may still have a 30, 45-minute commute downtown or to the energy corridor or whatever, but in their mind, I think it's just right now, everything's a mindset. Like if I live on the outskirts, then, I'll be safer there. And I'll have more space to do, homework and, work from home. So
The thing about Atlanta, which I'm guessing is similar, is you can still be in Atlanta and have what feels like a suburban neighborhood on the north side of town. We have kind of, Buckhead, as I explained to you earlier, has a lot of that feel. You'll drive through various streets and not really know much difference between there or a suburb 10 miles further out. You can be in those quote unquote highly dense urban neighborhoods too, where you're like, oh, I know I'm in the city, but you don't have to get that in Atlanta. And I'm guessing that's how you're describing Houston, is you can still have like the nice wide 100-foot plus lot with a house that feels like suburbia and have a Houston address, right?
sure. Yeah.
What neighborhood do you live in, by the way?
So I live in Memorial, which is just a little bit west of town it's a Memorial Villages, and I'm in one of the villages, which is called Spring Valley, and wonderful school district. I mean, I can't say enough about I have 2 kids in elementary school, and that school is everything to me. I mean, I've been on the auction committee for 4 years, was the auction co-chair and chair for 2 of those years. I've done donations, and collectively in those 4 years, I think we've raised over $625,000. So that's my heart is in the school district. I love it, and I just you have to love where you live, and I definitely love where I live in Houston. So,
Are you a transplant or are you from Houston?
Houston, I grew up what they say is inside the loop, which my friends who live inside the loop tell me that their GPS does not go outside the loop, so they don't come visit me as often as it should.
That's awesome.
But yeah,
we call it inside the perimeter here, by the way.
Well, they got 2 loops. They have 2
Similar.
loops.
We call it ITP and OTP, inside or outside the perimeter. That's the acronyms here.
Or OTL. Yeah, I'm OTL. So, don't ever come out here because this is like where the bad people are. But I grew up inside the loop. I grew up in a community called River Oaks, and then my parents divorced, and so my dad kind of moved to Westview and then Afton Oaks, and then my mom ended up going to Highland Village, Lynn Park, and then now she's in the Heights, which is all these areas are inside the loop and great areas. So, but now I am OTL. My grandparents, who are still alive and wonderful, 92 and 93, are just down the street. They're in Piney Point, and it's another village here in Memorial. So.
And Lee, Alex is pretty active too. From what I understand, you wake up early and you play tennis with frequency when we can play tennis. Probably a lot less of that going on. And you sent me a pretty hilarious photo of you fishing not too long ago. You catch some pretty big fish, huh?
I do. So I guess I'm a woman with all sorts of talents. I love to be active, but I can also, go to a gala and have a blast. But I go to Montana typically every summer in July for the whole month with the kids, and we fish and swim and hike and do all sorts of stuff. But my dad's 75. I'm sure he's gonna be really happy I said that. But he, just it's a little bit. I'm a little nervous to go see him with the kids who carry every kind of germ. He is the nearest hospital is an hour away, and if we left and he was sick, I would just never forgive myself, and I would hate that for him. And so we stuck it out, and we're in hot Houston. This is only the second time in 27 years that I have not gone to Montana in the summer.
Wow.
Uh,
Wow.
every other, in the first time was when my firstborn was born. She was born July 6th during the drought, which was miserable
So that
to
makes
be
you
pregnant.
29 this year. Second
How'd you
time.
know? Yes.
I just turned 21 last week.
Yes, you did.
At least I feel like it. I feel like
Yeah.
it. 35, but I feel like I'm 25. That's what I told my friends at dinner last week. So I don't know. Lee,
This is my last year in my 30s.
I'll tell you what, I want to be like Lee
Smirking.
Taylor when I'm however old you are. Can I
When
say it
I'm
on the air?
64. No, I'm 55.
Yeah, and you're like the youngest 55-year-old I know. This guy's fit. He does yoga. He does everything. So
Do you play tennis?
No, I don't have the bone structure for that.
You have the
I
height?
would tear up something within a few swings.
I'd whoop your ass.
I would stand still. If I could play like Pong that slowly, you know what I mean by Pong? Y'all are a little young for Pong.
I don't know that. Is that like
It's
bingo
like
or
that-
something?
It's like that digital game where it's like.
Oh,
real slow.
yeah, I know what
Really
you're talking
slow.
about. Yeah.
Really slow.
Okay.
My 29-year-old mind was thinking beer pong. So
Well, I'm pretty
Right.
good at that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a classic right there. Well, Lee, you got any other questions for Alex? 'Cause
Not really. I think that Houston is got even more suburbs and more exurbs than Atlanta does. It's a very sprawled out town. So it'll be an experiment for Houston as well as Atlanta to see which ones I think are going to be able to survive. I just think certain school districts and certain parts of some exurbs just aren't going to thrive in the next 20 years. There's going to be some real, tougher times for certain areas of America, and some of that's going to be about exurban. And certain cities, certain urban areas are not going to be able to survive either.
Yeah, and I think in conclusion to all our listeners, there's lots of things that we're going to shift our markets prior to COVID that we've touched on today. Things that were going to happen that we're developing. I think there's a lot of questions that everyone came to listen to today about what's going to happen to in-town living. I think Alex nailed it on the head this morning. She doesn't have a crystal ball. Neither do we. All we have is last month's, or possibly yesterday's trends to make decisions. And right now, we're all kind of living in a time of uncertainty. But in short, your primary residence is a long-term investment. And if you're going to be there 5 to 10 years and you're buying in a solid location, do not psych yourself out with analysis paralysis about it. Because I think that's where a lot of folks are getting caught up right now, is obsessing over home prices, where that's a flipping mentality. We're not trying to sell your home in 6 months. The market might go up, it might go down, but likely you're going to be there for the long haul. So just make sure you buy a house you love and you're going to be committed to, right?
And now's the time to do that. Find the neighborhood you love.
That's right.
And do it, because interest rates have never been lower in my entire life. I bought my first house in 1991 in McKinney, Texas at 9.5% on a VA loan.
wow.
Alex, any final thoughts? We appreciated having you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I love learning about the different markets in Atlanta. I think we talked about this before, just how we have a lot of similarities. We've been very fortunate that we've been able to come through this pandemic, and we've been able to keep up with things and just still stay at the top of the market. And I just appreciate y'all having me on. So
You bet.
All right, well, stick with us as we wrap up the show here. But folks, if you have any questions about certain neighborhoods, concerns about the topic we came to chat on today, let us know. And again, every week, this is real estate expert Lee Taylor, 20-year vet. I'm Jason Wieloch. We're with the Wieloch Group at Compass. And as a reminder, we not only can help you buy and sell and make smart choices here in Metro Atlanta, we have some of the best professionals now with this Compass network across the country. That's one of our huge value adds, is you don't need to go click on some random agent if you're moving to LA on Zillow and hire your agent through an ad. We can make sure you end up with the best agent in every city. And Alex happens to be one of those. So Alex Lloyd in Houston is one of the best if you're thinking of moving to Houston. And of course, if you're coming to Atlanta, she'll tell you about us. But that, see, I just put her on the spot. But folks, that's what we're here to do. And we'll be seeing you next week about the same time on Due Diligence.
Thanks, Alex.
thank y'all.
Bye.